Greetings traders and welcome back to today's video. Today we'll be doing a Forex weekly breakdown or Forex weekly outlook video. And so as always, I've selected a few pairs that I'm going to be focusing on throughout the course of this week. And so I'd like to share those insights with you guys. But before we get into the video, if you are not following me already on TradingView, I'd highly advise that you do so because of the fact that I do use my TradingView as my own personal journal, right? So I post each and every setup that I take. Always assume that when I've posted the setup on TradingView that I'm actually in the trade, right? I always say that. So this is your JPY. I did release a video last week where we did the Forex breakdown or outlook, and we spoke about EURJPY. I think price was still about here. That was I think I released that video on Sunday, and I spoke about the possibility of price having to respect this order block, and also we had the rejection block down there, how we'd expect price to hold as a firm support over this rejection block, and we can see how price has moved nicely towards the upside. And coming into this week, of course, we're going to speak about your JPY and how we're still anticipating further bullishness. But yes, like I said, I do use this as my journal. Over here, I'm explaining each and everything that I was seeing. This is that Forex Outlook video we did last week, right? So this was I just added this here so that if you're looking for a much more detailed walkthrough, you just watch the video and you get a very clear idea of why we were looking to find support at this specific region from a higher time frame perspective going into our lower time frames as well. You will see that I wonder why. Oh, you'll see that I took the setup. I posted this quite late when price had already hit the break even, where I got risk. I moved my SL to my entry, and you can see that's the TP hit over there. I did take this setup again on Friday. That was the entry. We can see today it hit break even. I did take the setup again today after the break even, after confirmations that occurred. It's just that I didn't add that share. I was a bit occupied with work, but that entry did then hit my stop loss, right? We will review what's going on in EURJPY, but we're still strong on buys, right? So last week was a very good week. Um, it was really, really good. Just looking at this is that Forex Outlook video we released on the 3rd. These were the pairs that I focused on, or that we focused on, in fact. These are the setups. We spoke about NZDCHF. 4R got hit there. Me personally, I looked at target 1:4. It did push low, hit the take profit, and then it did reject, right? This is that EURJPY. I couldn't add the other pairs last week here in my updates because last week was also crazy when it came to work. But you'll see here that I did release the ideas on this side. I just haven't updated them on the other side. So NZDCHF, USDCAD, which was a pretty good one. We're going to be continuing this idea in this week. So took sales over there. Let me just show you guys, just give you guys a sense or an idea that I actually do take these setups. So that was the entry. Price hit break even point, move my SL to my entry point, and then you can see how that 4R got hit over there. And then I did take another setup again Friday. This one did hit L. But looking at all the pairs that I took last week, 4 of those pairs hit take profit. So they all hit my 1:4, which meant I was 20R up. And then I think about 5 of the trades that I took hit my stop loss, right? And so if you're considering all of that, you're going to just minus the 20R, minus the 5 from the 20. So we're looking at a P&L of 15% made last week, which was very exceptional. It was a really, really good trading week. And so, yeah, I hope that you guys got to take these setups as well on your side because we did discuss them. But in any case, let's get into today's video. We're going to be starting with USD CAD. Now, like I always mention, how we go about looking at draw on liquidity is that what we anticipate is that the market is always going to look to take out external range liquidity, which exists at lows or highs. At this point, we see how the market took out this low, which is external range liquidity. From external range liquidity, we want to then see the market draw towards internal range liquidity, where we see this fair value gap, right? Cool, just added the annotation over there. So from external, we see the market draw to internal, and then from internal, the anticipation is that the market is going to draw towards external, right? So we already see how this July 28 July weekly candle hits the fair value gap and then starts to reject it. This fair value gap is also in line with this order block over here. It's just that we haven't marked it so that our charts can look clean. But if you look at the middle point of the fair value gap and the order block, we can see how this candle rejected both of that, right? And the order block itself, this low of this or open price of this candle, or let's just call it the low of the order block itself, got rejected, and now this candle rejects heavily, so closes below the order block, suggesting that this is a strong resistance point, right? This candle itself, that rejection resulted in this rejection block. So we can see how the market taps last week's candle, in fact, tapped into that weekly rejection block, and this week's candle rejects that weekly rejection block. So this area, I'm anticipating it to be a strong resistance point to anticipate further bearishness. So last week we wanted to see this candle as a down close candle, right? And so we anticipated bearishness, and we did take nice selling opportunities over there, which were good. But overall, we are in internal range. From internal range, we want to see the market draw towards external, right? Let's go on to the H4. Cool. So this is the H4 time frame. This is that weekly fair value gap. That is our ultimate draw. Like I always say, once we hit our array, right? Our point of interest. What we then anticipate is for the H4 to start to give us indication that there's in fact selling occurring over here. So that indication is in form of a market structure shift. So once a structure break occurs, in this case, this is a market structure shift, that implies that this area over here, this weekly fair value gap, is going to hold as a strong resistance point, right? Because it's forcing price to start to break structure towards the downside, right? So we see how we get this heavy candle, this heavy displacement towards the downside, taking out all of these lows, right? And then we start to see the market draw towards internal. All of these lows exist as external range liquidity. Now we draw towards internal. Last week's trading, where we then look for selling opportunities over here, caught a nice 1:4, right? And look at the range. From there, this is the entire range. So we're going to be looking for selling opportunities the entire time, provided that the 4 hour remains bearish, right? So we can see in this case how, from internal, we went external, right? Heavy volatility towards the downside, and now we're pulling back. What are we pulling back into? Note that this is an intermediate term high because it rebalanced this fair value gap, and then that is our low. So the market pulled back into premium prices, right, relative to that high and that low, and it hit our 79, hit our 62 to 79% fib ratios, which are high probability for retracements, not retracements, but reversals to occur in this instance, right? And notice how these numbers are also in line with that fair value gap over there, right? And see how these candles reject that fair value gap. They don't close above that point, suggesting that this might potentially be a strong resistance point for us to look for opportunities towards the downside. But remember, we are currently out of our trading. It's quite late. This is a New York time. In my time, it's actually 11 p.m. at the moment, right? It's quite late. This is not your kill zone times. You want to come during London session, wait for price to hit point of interest. Once it hits a point of interest, then look for selling opportunities or confirmations on the lower time frames, which would be the M15 time frame because it's relative to the 4H. It might just happen that tomorrow that price continues higher, right? And starts to take out this high, right? But make sure that you noting this high. You don't want to see price break that point because if it breaks this point, that implies that the 4 hour is now bullish. And if it's bullish, you don't want to be looking for selling opportunities because that is against the narrative of having to, or the overall narrative of having to see price action go towards the downside. So if the 4 hour is bearish, you look for opportunities. But if it switches bullish, you want to wait it out until price switches bearish again, right? But what I'd like to leave you guys with when it comes to USD CAD or all of these pairs is that all you need to do, don't predict things, just be reactive based on what the market gives you, right? Let's move on. Going on to EURGBP, just another one to focus on. Again, external range liquidity got taken there. If you recall, if you've been watching for the past few weeks, all of these candles over here we traded bullish because we went from internal range, which was this fair value gap, and the anticipation was to draw towards external. So you notice how for close to 2 months we had a draw on liquidity and we were constantly looking for buying opportunities on the 4 hour so as to reach that point. And if you remember this week over here, the moment we reached that point, I said that we'd be looking for selling opportunities and we sold, got some proper reward over here. We see how the market reaches this redelivered, rebalanced array, right? And so the anticipation is for bullishness, the draw towards that external range liquidity, but there's something else going on the 4 hour time frame that we're going to be considering. We want to see potentially the market come back to this redelivered rebalance array. If we find a market structure shift on the 4 hour, we then look for continuation higher, but there's a potential that the market does pull back into this weekly fair value gap. But all of these things, we just need to wait for the market to give us an indication of what it wants to do, right? Let's look at the 4H. Cool. So on the 4 hour time frame, what has happened is this. Although the weekly time frame is suggesting bullishness, what happened on the 4 hour is that, in fact, it happened quite early. That low over there, that is considered as an intermediate term low because it rebalanced this fair value gap. It's a strong reference point. If price breaks that point, this suggests that the 4 hour is now bearish. All along, it had been bullish after it rebalanced this redelivered rebalance array. And then the moment price broke that point, you're no longer going to be looking for buying opportunities because the 4 hour is bearish. You need to wait for it to switch bullish first, right? And so either price, what I'm anticipating is that either price comes back into this array, balances it again. If we get a market structure shift, something like this, balances it, we get a market structure shift there, price pulls back into an array, then I'll be looking for buying opportunities. But if that doesn't happen, that's a if that doesn't happen, price may just potentially continue lower, hit this array, wait again for market structure shift, look for point of interest to continue the market higher. Those are the things that I'm going to be anticipating over here. Let's continue. Cool. EURJPY. External range got taken. The draw was towards internal. We see how we rebalance this fair value gap. From internal, the draw is then towards external. Let's look at the 4H. Cool. If you recall last week's video, this is played out quite beautifully. Pulled back into that fair value gap, got the market structure shift, which is indicating that this is now a bullish market. In fact, that's a break of structure. This is now bullish. We spoke about how we want to see price being supported all the way down here. This rejection block worked as a support. We see heavy volatility towards the upside. As of recent price action, we've pulled back into this rejection block. But then again, like I always say, all you want to wait for throughout the course of this week is EURJPY pulling back into a potential order block. fair value gap, mitigation block, all of these things. I will teach all of these things when we get into, just releasing mentorship videos on YouTube and here on TradingView. But yeah, wait for confirmations during your kill zone, continue the market higher as long as the 4 hour is bullish. All right. So over here, we're still looking for bullishness. Let's continue. Cool. So we're looking at GBPCHF. This is the weekly time frame. Again, external range liquidity got taken. The draw was towards internal. From internal, the draw is towards external. But we can see at the moment how last week's trading, last week's candle pushed heavily towards the upside. We see at the moment that it's now in this weekly fair value gap, right? There's also this order block that you'd also want to consider. Price could potentially reach there, but this weekly fair value gap could hold as a strong resistance point for us to see price continue towards the downside, right? But yeah, we're just gonna have to wait things out and see how that plays out. But let's look at the 4 hour time frame in terms of what you'd anticipate to happen. Cool. On the 4 hour time frame, this is that weekly fair value gap. All I'm anticipating is for the market to potentially give us a market structure shift towards the downside. What that essentially looks like is price just having to break this low, right? It could continue higher, but all you want to see is a market structure shift towards the downside. That then gives you clear confirmation that this array over here is going to hold or is holding as a strong resistance point. But if price is still continuing bullish, then there's a potential that this array is going to fail. So you'll only look for selling opportunities the moment you get that market structure shift. Price pulls back into a array of yours, a point of interest in your kill zone. Then you go into your M15 and look for confirmation entries to continue the market lower. So you'll see I have this low marked. If price does push lower and breaks that point, then I'll be looking for, selling opportunities. It could happen that a low is made again, then a high, then I'll just mark that low, right? Let's move on. USDCHF, again, external range got taken, the market draws towards internal, fair value gap got filled, we are at that bearish order block. We rejected heavily, right? The draw is towards external range liquidity. After hitting that weekly order block, right, we get a market structure shift, right? Now indicating that this market is now bearish. The 4 hour is now bearish, right? And so now we're looking for bearish opportunities at points of interest. At the moment, we've pulled back into a premium price. Look at those ratios again, aligned with this order block. All we want to do tomorrow is ensure that the market is in our point of interest, and we then look for confirmation entries on the smaller time frames to continue the market lower. All right. This is NZDCHF weekly time frame. Again, external range liquidity got taken. The draw is towards internal. From internal, the draw is towards external. But we can see that last week's trading, we pulled back into this, and this week we pulled back into this redelivered, rebalance array. And so we're anticipating that this area might hold as a strong resistance point to continue the market lower. Let's look at the 4H. Cool. So we can see that we're currently trading in that weekly redelivered rebalance array. What are we anticipating? Just a market structure shift towards the downside to occur. That will then give us confirmation that the 4 hour is responding really well to this area, and this area might hold as a strong resistance point. Then we just look for selling opportunities once price hits a point of interest, right? It's that simple. And lastly, looking at EURNZD weekly time frame. Look, external range got taken. The draw was towards internal. We react off of this order block, which held as a strong support. The draw is towards external range liquidity over there. Looking at the H4, we can see that at some point the market went bearish, right? When price broke that low. And so we weren't looking for buying opportunities. We were just waiting. And then eventually we see how the market switch bullish there again. So at the moment, we're just looking for buying opportunities. But do note this low because that is an intermediate term low. You don't want to see the market break that point. If that happens, the 4 hour is bearish, right? Only look for buying opportunities in a bullish market. In any case, that's it for this week. Kind regards, the architect.